Hey, good morning. How you doing? How you doing? Come on, come on. That's new water. Come on. There you go. There you go.
I'm working on the project because in a way I am more involved with the canvas, you know, I can be part of the canvas, part of the painting. Sometimes I'm building a little bridge, you know, when it's a kind of a big canvas, I'm building a little bridge and I'm in the middle of the bridge, you know, trying to reach into that corner over there, and it is a kind of a dancing too, you know, because I let myself go with the move, with the energy, and, you know, it depends, you know, if I'm having a brush in my hand, or if I'm having a squeegee in my hands, or if I'm having a rag in my hands, you know, the approach and the motion, and, you know, it's different all the time, you know.
In New Mexico, particularly Santa Fe and Taos, we have a long-standing tradition. You know, we have the Taos masters that everybody likes to study, and we have the Cinco Pintores who developed the Santa Fe art community. And if you were going to study the art community of the 70s, 80s, and 90s, you would definitely have to look at Sergio. If you had to name a dozen artists that were significant to the scene in these decades, I think you would have to include Sergio as one of the people in that group.
Yeah, in the early 1950, my oldest brother surprised me one day because he said to me, Sergio, you gotta go to the fine arts school and, you know, I just put your name in there and you gotta go and give an exam. I said, what? You better get some charcoal and paper and I wanna go with you, and, you know, it's going to be a 3 days exam. And, you know, very surprisingly for me, I went over there and started doing, you know, the exam with charcoals and papers and doing, you know, those kind of Greek plaster things, you know. When we went to the other school, it's called Academia. That's you know, kind of a more serious because they ask us to decide what we want a person, you know, if we want to be a sculptor, or you want to be a painter, or you want to be an architect, you know. At that time, I just decided to be, you know, to say I want to be a painter. It's a kind of a, after finishing, you know, the academia, you know, you are kind of a graduate, you are a painter, you know, kind of a title they give you, you know. You spend most of the time, you know, working in your painting or working in your sculpture or in, you know, printmaking, you know. There was a very beautiful, very progressive school, and we put together a very, very beautiful show, my first exhibition, you know, monotypes with another artist very well known today is Julio Leparc, Francisco Sobrino, another painter, which both of them live in Europe now, in Paris.
He actually has maintained a very strict discipline and a very strong commitment to his work. I mean, he lives very basically, very simply, a wood stove, a printing press, and the studio. And every day he has his little routine. He walks to the grocery store, he walks to visit a few friends, but every day he's in his studio painting, and I think that's a very important example. And I think he's maintained that through difficulties in his life, which we all have, and yet he's maintained that focus.
Let's go over there. Yeah, come on, come on. Come on.
This is a mate, typical from Argentina. You know, people over there drinks, you know, in the morning, afternoon, evening, nights. It's a gourd, and this is called a bombilla. It's a kind of a straw. You know, you put the mate inside in hot water, and then you swallow, and that's the mate is a kind of a tea in a way. And they are different shapes and different gourd. This is more elaborated, more beautiful, because people do some kind of working with silver, you know, and it's very elaborated, very pretty, and very expensive too. And that bombilla also could be very well elaborated, and they have little holes in there, you know, like to keep the water, you know, coming through the bombilla, you know, to the kind of a straw. And that's typical for hundreds of years. The gauchos in Argentina used to drink a lot. La China, his wife, was, you know, having the mate ready for him when he was coming home. And my father used to drink mate in the morning, early in the morning, late in the night, you know. He was putting a little drop of caña, you know, it's a kind of a hard liquor, you know, and some other people used to put in the mate some milk. You know, it depends, but mate is still very traditional in Argentina, and Uruguay, and Chile, and Paraguay, you know.
And if you look at his work more closely, you see his earlier work being very masterful. I mean, he's really quite a draftsman. Some of the things that he did in Europe, drawings that he did in Europe, and etchings that he did there, they look like old masters. And when you show them to people that know his work, they're surprised that he has that kind of a background.
1959, I decided to go to Paris too, you know, with a kind of a partial grant from the French government, you know, to go study over there. And I joined my friend Leparc, and then Sobrino was there, and other Argentinian artists. And, you know, to survive a little bit, you know, we used to go with friends, you know, to draw, you know, on the street. You know, we were doing, or I was doing most of the time, you know, kind of a weird drawings, pen and ink drawings, you know, and throwing them away on the sidewalk and putting a little kind of a board saying, give me what you want and take the picture you like the most, and, you know. And while I was doing that, you know, I was doing my drawings, just kind of performing there, and it was kind of interesting because there were a lot of different people, you know, in the Quartier Latin area in Paris, very close to the Sorbonne, where is the university in Paris. And, you know, I met a lot of French artists that they were very interested in my work at the time, and they came to visit me, stay with me in Paris. At the time, I used to be in Montparnasse, a very beautiful area in Paris, you know, very romantic. Picasso's, Modigliani's, you know, all the beautiful things. And it was a great time because, you know, it was during the kind of existentialism time, you know. There was Sartre, you know, all those guys, you know, Café de Magot, Saint-Germain-des-Prés. It was a very exciting time. And I decided to go with those guys from Germany, you know, to Munich. But first we went to Bonn in the north of Germany and spent a week with them, and it was very nice. My first time in Germany, you know, kind of strange because of the language, you know, I couldn't understand or say a word, but my Spanish and my French helped me a lot. They were very interesting at that time because there were a lot of artists, you know, going to a place called El Gijón, a bar, you know, very frequented by artists, musicians, and people from theater. And I met a lot of beautiful people over there, and a great man, a great painter at the time. His name was Viola, Emmanuel, and kind of a gypsy type, you know, and he was very famous and very wild. And he used to bring to his house and studios, you know, all those famous bullfighters and flamenco dancers. And, you know, I was kind of helping him working in the studio, you know, preparing his, stretching his canvases and, you know, putting the canvases for him, you know, ready to go and paint. And sometimes I did more than that. And it was very exciting being with him and you know, other painter writers, and, you know, and beautiful. I love Spain. I travel a lot, you know, in Segovia, Malaga, Andalusia, and, you know, Barcelona area, very beautiful at the time, you know, talking about more than 30 years ago. And also in the, you know, the area in Galicia in the north. But I enjoy my time, and I live very, you know, kind of a very romantic life, you know, a lot of fun. I used to drink a lot and party a lot, you know, going to the bullfights, and I love the flamenco, the gypsies, and I love everything, the food, and, you know.
I also think he's in love with the act of painting. So you get these sweeping brush strokes and this palette knife swoop and lines and zigzags, and just the very act of painting. In some ways, he does a dance in front of the canvas, and he loves music and he loves dancing. And so this, he really throws himself into the work. Someone was defining his work, describing his work one time, and they said it looked like a car wreck, you know, because there's just color and line and movement in all directions.
1969. I can say it was my first one-man show, you know, in my life, and very exciting and a beautiful catalog. And you know, at the time when I was having that show, you know, the American went to the moon, arrived into the moon, and it's supposed to be on TV in Mexico City, but you know, all the channels were very involved with American being in the moon, dancing, jumping over there. It was interesting because I used to go to an area called La Zona Rosa, you know, the pink zone in Mexico City, where all those crazy artists, you know, writers, musicians used to go. And one day I saw a guy over there, you know, a black guy, you know, just looking at me for many times, you know. I used to go every day over there, and he was kind of looking. And finally I decided to go and meet him, and he was doing some portraits of me, drawings.
Ron Adams was an artist that had a shop in Santa Fe where a lot of artists came to work, and Sergio was kind of a mainstay of that shop. They were good friends, and he just worked there. He printed there and sometimes acted as an assistant.
He used to have beautiful etching press, a very old etching press. I remember, you know, working there.
Do you remember?
A lot of paintings in there too.
I remember once when you were trying to cook something in the electric skillet, and you plugged the skillet in, and it wasn't cooking fast enough, so you turned the fire on under it.
I don't like anything electric, and I don't swim in it.
In 72 and 73, I had studios around that railroad area where San Busco is and Tomasitas is. And I was showing with a guy who had a gallery in the basement there. And Ron Adams started setting up his print shop, so I met Ron. And Ron kept saying, you got to meet this Argentinian guy who's a good friend of mine. I was raised in South America, so I spoke Spanish, so he was especially interested. So somewhere in there, Sergio showed up, you know, and I think around 75, but I'm not 100% sure. And, you know, because of the Spanish and because the mood was that way in those days, you know, we got immediately friendly. And then I remember, kind of the picture I remember of Sergio in those days is with his hands all full of etching inks, inking up all those plates at Ron's shop in that kind of sooty environment, and just this sort of kind of flashy way in which he used to ink these etchings. I mean, not this sort of deliberate thing, but there was this kind of like dramatic way in which he used to buff these things up and print them. And I kind of used to enjoy just watching the dance of inking up the etchings and stuff like that. Because I was doing monotypes at Ron's, and we were actually kind of inventing the medium for ourselves at Ron's shop. Ron just sort of opened it up to experiment with monotype. I remember Sergio's sort of rolling up these big hunks of rectangular color and then coming over it with this sort of kind of swordplay brushwork. And even now in Sergio's paintings, I see the residue of this kind of, these blocks of color, horizontal color that came from him just